I wish to share many years of experience with you, and hopefully this can help you further your professional careers. I am very proud to say that I have written 43 publications. I have been teaching for 23 years, and all my experience has taught me that a textbook alone cannot cater to the specific needs of a class. I know that sounds counterproductive to what I'm doing as an author, but it's true. It is true. It must be adapted and tailored to the needs of the students. And there is this misconception that if I open the book and follow the instructions, I can enter a classroom and start teaching. That unfortunately is not true. Now, before I get into the details, I want to clarify something. You are all aware of the Common European Framework, which is a system used to classify the competency of an individual when speaking the language. Now, this is an international classification system that is used everywhere. I'm just pointing this out because we will be focusing on educational scenarios and referring to some levels concerning ELT. More specifically, as we humorously say, lower level, as we call it here in Greece, is the B2 level, the upper intermediate. And we will also be focusing on another level, the pre-A1. Now, before I continue, I have to stress something, and we must insist on this. When we're saying that we must prepare our lesson, we are referring to the educational scenario and not the lesson plan. Now, you might be confused, but there are publishers and schools that offer you a lesson plan that has been created. They give it to the teacher, and they actually ask the teacher, follow the instructions, follow our directions, and everything will be fine. No, I'm sorry to say, but this is strictly technocratic, and it has a limited scope. To be honest, when we're focusing on a specific group of students, you have to take into consideration some aspects of their personalities. It's always based on social, communicative, real-life circumstances. It's much more broader and deeper, and this is why we're talking about educational scenarios. And yes, as teachers, we need more time to prepare these things. And to be honest, I have to admit that an educational scenario is what you should keep in mind due to the specific educational needs and abilities of each individual student and not of the whole classroom. We are going to look into some educational scenarios and focus on the teaching context, as we will be placing and stressing more emphasis on the learners themselves. Now, we will start with a B2 level class of 5 students. This is a very typical scenario. You can, face it here in Greece as a teacher. Let's start with Mary. She's a B2 level student. John, even though he is in the B2 level class, his level is a B1 and is distracted easily. Another student, Peter, is above B2 and needs constant motivation because he's bored and he doesn't take part in the lesson. Irene, well, I know this might sound crazy, but there are some schools that have, insufficient students for certain levels. This school didn't have a C1 level, so they put Irene in B2 because she also knew the children, they're her friends, and the thing is that she's too good for this class and she degrades the other people. George is a B2 level student, autistic. He shows exceptional prowess when it has to do with critical thinking and reading, but he's not a team player. So this is a typical educational scenario that you can see and, experience in a school. This one now is another scenario for pre-A1. Let's look into what we're going to focus on, the teaching context. And we're talking about a class of 8 students of a pre-A1 level, or as we say in Greece, junior A or A junior. They have just started lessons. It's the first day at school. 4 students have no idea how to use the English language. However, 2 of them have been homeschooled by their parents, and they already know the colors, how to, use the alphabet, numbers, and how to spell their name. We also have 1 student that has been diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia. And finally, we have a student who just wants to play and distracts everyone. So he's disrupting the whole course of the lesson. Now, this might terrify you, but this is reality. A lesson plan cannot cater to the needs of such a diverse classroom. Okay, so Just bear in mind a few things, that a course book, a textbook is made to be marketable, and it doesn't cater to all cultures. You usually find the standard family dynamic, mother, father, brother, sister, grandparents, and is strictly based on the CFR level. Otherwise, it can't be published, okay? It has to be strictly based on that. LGBTQI terms are non-existent. You'll never find them. As an author, I've tried to promote my work. They keep telling me no, and they keep removing them from the textbooks. And unfortunately, disabilities have minor representation. And I've had many students who have disabilities. Now, yes, you can find ELT inclusive materials. We'll talk about this later. They're not always free, so we'll discuss some aspects of this. Okay, so what's the first thing that I should do? Let's think about this. First of all, we have to establish a framework, a collaboration framework, not authority. I have worked for schools, and the principal or the school manager will approach me and say, okay, for the first day of school, I want them to know how to say their names, write their names, say good morning, goodbye, and learn the first 4 letters of the alphabet. And I'm like, that's impossible. How am I going to do this within 45 to 50 minutes? It's a hugely wrong approach to meeting your students for the first time. We must become an inspiration to them. I'm not saying a leader. I'm not talking about authority. I'm not also talking about being a friend, something in between, and we're instilling respect. And this respect must be reciprocated. We're talking about to get to know them, their family background, if there's a parent loss. And you know what? The school must inform us of any special educational needs, what's going on with the family, so that we are aware not to overstep our boundaries and be careful of what we're saying. And of course, we have to take into consideration the relationship that they have with their classmates from school, because there might be some kids who are arguing, and it's best not to have them, collaborate together in class. Now, you have to give them their voice. Let them express themselves. This is the most important part of creating an educational plan to prepare your students for the lesson. Now, when we're talking about doing research, ask them things like hobbies, sports, what do they look up to? The people, the celebrities that they enjoy watching. This is the most crucial aspect of adapting the textbook. Now, having said this, I would honestly say that you should devote at least 2 lessons to getting to know your students. Sing a song, do something, but not start, the textbook right away. Since we're talking about preparing our lesson, we will focus on 4 aspects, 4 steps into preparing our lessons. These are the four steps that we have to take into mind. Let me focus on the last one a bit. Implementing the lesson. What you do in your classrooms is up to you. How you choose to teach later on in life, professionally, is something that you will choose how to do. However, I'm obliged as a teacher trainer to show you the difference between 2 lesson techniques. First of all, we have the present, practice, and produce paradigm versus the task-based lesson. What are the differences? And this is something that I'm proud to say I know that your course instructors are telling you all the time. The PPP framework has to do with predetermined structures from the textbook. You, as the teacher, are the bosses. You are center stage in the class, and your word is law. So whatever you say, they have no objection to it. Unfortunately, this technique is something that I remember when I was young. This is how they taught us. We had no creativity, no collaboration, no critical thinking, no communication. And that was horrible. On the other hand, if you take our advice, you should start working on task-based lessons. We're moving from language experience to language analysis. You are obliged as teachers to prepare your lesson. Offer your students the materials. Take a seat back and watch them work. Only intervene when necessary. And you know what? We'll be discussing this method today. And all of our preparation will instill the confidence in them to work on new techniques. They'll learn more vocabulary than the one that is presented in the course book. And of course, it's not only about grammar and vocabulary, and that's what we want our students to reap. We want them to enjoy and experience the language firsthand. Let's start. First fact, This is the first step into preparing our lesson. What's today's lesson about? Well, you just open your textbook and look at the pages, okay? So the first lesson, it's about grammar or vocabulary or reading. After analyzing what you're going to teach, you have to examine the exercises. Now, some of the exercises can be excluded or even must be excluded based on the educational needs and abilities of your students. I know this sounds insane, but as an author, me, myself, and other colleagues, we have a lot of exercises in the book. And you know what? School owners and parents think that, oh my God, they haven't finished the book. They've left a few exercises out. It's not how it works. We offer extra exercises so that students can have a wide range of, options. You as teachers have to choose what suit their needs. So we also offer supplemental materials that can take their place. You as the teachers have to choose which of the materials you're going to use, do your search online, and find what suits their abilities. Finally, I'd also like to say that it is advisable to attend conferences throughout your whole life. We are lifelong learners. And you know what? The English language is like a living organism. So as you can imagine, it progresses and it is in constant flux. ELT conferences offer you two options to actively take part in academic lectures. You learn new teaching methods and methodology. And of course, you can also follow the book presentations of the publishers, as they will show you techniques on how to adapt a few things. Because the textbook itself is not, it cannot, be followed to the letter all the time. So, having said this, can the lesson be introduced in advance? You might have heard of the flipped learning approach. What is this? I wish I had 2 hours to explain it. I'll be very brief. When we're talking about flipped learning, we're talking about a methodology that helps teachers prioritize active learning during class time by assigning students the materials at home. So a student can watch a lecture, a video, anything at home, prepare the notes, prepare some work, and then go to school and collaborate with the others and do something more productive. Now, it might sound difficult. It's not. There are many advantages to it because they get a first stimulus at home. There's more access to content because they can actually watch the video beforehand at home, and they can watch it again a second time if they want to repeat the process. And this will actually prepare them for what you can do in class if you want to promote more skills. The disadvantages, yes, the teacher has to work even more, and technology is not always available for kids, and some might find it tedious and tiring. Okay, now let's go to the second aspect of preparing our lesson, examining the educational scenario itself. Now, I want to focus your attention on some elements. What are the educational abilities and needs of your students? Are they uninspired? Do they need motivation? What should they take away from the lesson? So you have, for example, the textbook, and it has 10 words that have to be learned in one lesson. I prefer my students to learn 3 words and how to use them in a sentence instead of having them learn 10 words by heart and not knowing how to use them. Having said this, when we're asking ourselves, how will they remember it the next time? I do not like memorization, rote learning. I am not in favor of homework. I will assign a few things for homework if it's a presentation, if it has to do with an essay or searching for information online, but not anything else like repetitive exercises. Practical application, of course, a challenge in class, we'll talk about this, and of course, teamwork. So what are we talking about? Yes, I'm talking about the 4 C's of the 21st century, the 21st century skills. When you go through your textbook and you're looking at the double-page spread of the lesson that you're supposed to teach, go through the exercises, do the inspire critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creativity. If you cannot find these elements in the exercises, cross them out. Do not apply them in class. Yes, I know this sounds crazy, but it's reality. Substitute them with something else. And here we go. Let's start. Now, I'm going to open my chat here, and I would also like to ask the audience. So as I'm speaking and doing my presentation, I will be asking a few questions. I would love to see your feedback here in the comments. Let's start with a lesson. Let's assume that we have speaking. So, a speaking lesson in course books, our textbooks, the one we teach, you will usually find this question. What is your daily routine? So the ELT focus material is, what are your hobbies? What is your daily routine? So what do teachers do? They will ask the student, okay, Jim, tell me about your daily routine. In the morning, I wake up, I have breakfast, I then go to school. Okay, so what? I know this sounds harsh, but we have not gained anything from this question. And a lot of textbooks have these types of questions. Where's the creativity? Where's the collaboration? Where's the communication? Nothing. So I'm asking you, the audience, how would you change this question? What would you do to make our students interact with their peers? Now, because I don't want to waste your time, until I start seeing answers in the comments, I'm going to move on with one of my own ideas. It doesn't mean it's the only idea. There's so many approaches to rectifying this situation. So, one idea is the listening triangle. Have you ever heard of this? Speaker, questionnaire, and note taker. Take this question, what is your daily routine? And switch it around. Ask your partner about his daily routine. Present your findings to the class. Okay, so here's how it works. You choose 3 students or you have 3 volunteers. They get up, they go to the board. One student, the questionnaire, asks the other student, the speaker, about his daily routine. So Jim, what do you do every day? Well, John, I get up, I do this, I do that. And then the speaker asks even more questions, the questionnaire. And what do you think about basketball? Do you find it tiring? How many hours do you play per week? And then you start having collaboration, communication, and the most beautiful part of all, the note taker. If you have a person, a student who is quite the introvert, who is quite withdrawn and does not like to express himself, he will be taking notes. He's taking part in the lesson. He's not sitting in the corner by himself. And then, when the other 2 have finished their conversation, you will ask the note taker to present the findings to the rest of the class. So you've actually integrated 3 individuals instead of 1. Now, I see some comments in the chat. Thank you so much. And I agree, talk about my routine, which is quite different from my students. They may ask me further questions to generate ideas. That's great, because we are promoting a conversation, and this is collaboration. Thank you. Now, I can see more comments. I don't want to delay everyone. Okay, but this is wonderful. Now, make them have a conversation about what they like most, or least in their routine, and why. Yes. Have them present things that they don't like. This is what we want, differentiation, and developing one simple question in the textbook into something more creative. And that's why we should change the textbooks. Okay, let's move on. So, having said this, we will involve students of various competencies and personalities. Let's look at something else. I love vocabulary. Here's a picture of a lot of items. I bet you $100 that there might be at least one word that not everyone knows. Okay, everyone here today is a teacher, a student, so we're quite fluent at using the English language, but we're not gods. We don't know all words. We cannot have the same demands from our students. So I remember when I was young, I had huge issues with memorization. I couldn't learn things by heart. I was shy, I had low self-esteem. Other students also have problems with pronunciation. Now, look at this note here, recognition and identification. If you have a student who is shy and does not want to speak his voice or has problems with pronunciation, try to encourage the student. Ask the student, which one is the ball? He can actually point to it, showing us that he knows what it means, taking part in class. Did you guys know that there are certificates and universities in England that actually promote certificates in the speaking segments where they ask the student to point to objects? Now, as we're looking at the vocabulary, I would like you to add some comments in the chat. Think of ways for students to collaborate together and identify objects in such a way that they will learn them. As you will be adding comments, I will start explaining a few techniques here. So I mentioned pointing. Thank you. We can have a game of miming. Thank you for your feedback. I really appreciate it. Miming is a wonderful game, and it can inspire their classmates. They see it as a game, they participate, thus we have collaboration. Now, I love task sharing, sorting, matching, ranking. I can see another comment here, put them in categories such as sports, rooms in the house. Yes, thank you so much. You have no idea how much this helps. So what items can we find in the bedroom? They can start out by pointing, then they can name them. That's wonderful. Thank you. Now, this all encourages the use of the target vocabulary. And you know what? I remember I once had a lesson, with a couple of students, and we were sorting out the objects based on the value. And there are two objects you can see in the picture, a brush and lipstick. So I had them, discuss, they were having a discussion, which object is more expensive. So the boy was like, the brush is more expensive, obviously. And the girl answered, do you know how much money my mother pays for lipstick? It was amazing. And I love the fact that they're exchanging ideas and they're communicating. So we have group vocabulary, and the most important of all, they are not learning only vocabulary, but they're expressing value concerning items, materials, everything. Now, thank you for all the comments. I hope I didn't miss any, but I'll read them, soon. Let's go to the third aspect of preparing our lesson, technology. I love technology. Technology is our assistant. First of all, before I speak about technology, we as educators have the obligation to equip our students with the right competencies. If you look at this chart here, we have critical critical thinking, of course, because it's part of the 4C skills, but it goes beyond that. Interpersonal skills, we are talking about collaboration and communication. Intrapersonal, this is where things get interesting. Are we gods? Are we perfect at everything? Of course not. Do we have our limits? Yes. Are we good at everything? No. We might be better at writing or speaking, but intrapersonal skills has to do with our own understanding of how we, as individuals of society, know our limits and what we can contribute to better or worse. So knowing your limits is perfectly fine, and knowing where you can contribute more is important. Keep this in mind. We're going to say something in a little bit. Now, the other blue image here of the puzzle has to do with media and information literacy, knowing how to use the internet. And now this is what we're going to be talking about, technology. As for the other two, well-being and faith, you should be happy when you're attending class. This is up to the teacher to provide a wonderful, harmonious environment. Finally, as for global citizenship, this is where the publishers lack. Unfortunately, our materials are not always inclusive, and it's up to the teacher to make sure that everything is up to par with the standards and, respect of our students. So we're talking about the skills, knowledge, values, and attitudes that we should instill in our students in class. Having said this, let's look at this reading exercise. I love this exercise here. How can you change a reading exercise to make it more interesting and more educational for our students? So you have this reading in the textbook. The students have to read about the first light bulb. You have a typical multiple choice, question, sheet afterwards. And the question is, when was the first light bulb invented and by whom? So the kids go through the text and they figure out that the person who invented it is actually Thomas Edison in 1879. Although this is a bit debatable, I've heard a lot of other stories of other people who have, discovered the first light bulb. Regardless, I want to ask a question. The audience, will the students actually gain something from this? Think about it. What can the students gain from all this? Will this change their life perspective? Will they learn something that will help them in their lives? I don't think so, because this does not inspire critical thinking. So how can I actively engage our students? Check this out. I want everyone to answer something in the chat. I want to use one question word, one simple question word that will ignite their critical thinking. Which question word are we going to use instead of when and whom? May I please see your answers in the comments? Why? Thank you so much. Thank you all for your answers. So here we go. Now, why was the invention of the light bulb the greatest innovation in history? So you tell your students to go back home, they start working, on their research, and they produce these wonderful answers, because this is what we call flipped learning. They went home and they started producing their answers. It helped to establish social order after sundown. It extended the workday well into the night, and of course allowed us to navigate and travel safely in the dark. This is critical thinking. This is research. This is flipped learning. And then they go back to class. They exchange their opinions, their ideas. And this is the beauty of flipped learning and, of course, collaborating with others. Thank you guys for helping out. Okay, yes, the correct answer is why. Now, some colleague once told me at a teacher's conference, I was training some teachers. Yes, Catherine, sounds all great and fine, but what about the students that copy upon coming to the classroom? Only 2 or 3 of them are going to do work and the others are just copying. Well, I have the answer to that as well. Or actually, Sir Ken Robinson has the answer to that. Sir Ken Robinson is an educator and an author, a person I always admire. I mean, he has passed away, but his legend, his legacy will live on. Some people call it copying, but outside schools, it's called collaboration. Think about it. How many people will not collaborate with others in a workplace? If you're working somewhere in an office, you have to collaborate with others and you have to learn how to do this. Please scan the QR code here. It will direct you to one of the best TEDx talks I've ever heard. Do schools kill creativity? It is unimaginable. I mean, his speech is remarkable. It's funny, thought-provoking, and it will broaden your horizons to what education actually is. Sir Ken Robinson, please watch this video after our presentation. Now, since we're talking about technology, some of the textbooks are outdated. As you can understand, publishers can't produce textbooks every year. So a textbook might be in circulation for 4 or 5 years. The videos become stale, and the students cannot identify with the characters or the introductory videos. You have to find new videos to keep them motivated. Find the right video for every unit that you're teaching. Now, you can offer them a challenge. There are online resources. Look at this picture on the right. This is from the New York Times, June 2021, a vocabulary challenge. There are so many games you can find online. This one, it offers you 40 words, and the exercise is about using as many as you can in a specific time frame, having the words make sense, and writing a small paragraph up to 50 words, a 10-minute time challenge, and the kids go crazy when you assign it in class. And there's so many more challenges and resources you can find. There are, of course, online educational sites like the British Council, Cambridge. They have online videos, cartoons with animations, multiple choice. These are materials that you can use, because the ones in the textbooks are not always enough and they do not cater to the needs of students. And if you think it's tiring to do this on yourselves, why don't you apply a teaching assistant? There are more than 20 teaching assistants online. I choose 2 of them. Kahoot, for example, can be used for grammar. You can scan a QR code on the board, have your kids scan it with their phone and have a multiple choice exercise based on what you just taught. For example, present simple and present continuous. You can also have Quizlet, which has to do with vocabulary. Okay? And you can have a lifetime competition. Your kids will go crazy because the progress is displayed on the whiteboard. Now, instead of learning the words by heart, okay, you can have them, use the same words all the time in a game. And they go crazy. Look at the picture on the lower right. It does not do justice to what's going on in class. They're yelling, they're having the greatest of times, and they are happy. They are learning. Now, one small note that I'd like to add. I'm very proud of one of my students who has many special educational needs. and he is struggling with vocabulary. However, he is a fighter. He never gives up. Every time we play this game, he wants to surpass my personal score in these games. So what does he do? He goes back home and he's like, Miss Catherine, next day, the next time I'm going to see you, I'm going to score more than you will. Okay, let's see. And he actually plays this game at home. And when he does come back to lesson, he will have acquired the knowledge necessary to remember and use the vocabulary efficiently. Kudos to him. Very good. This is, guys, what we call differentiation. Okay. Now, when we're talking about technology, we're using so many programs like WebEx, Zoom, invite a guest speaker. I mean, all our parents, the students' parents, friends of ours, our doctors, they're firefighters, invite someone for 5 minutes to share his experience. This will inspire the students in class. Tell the school principal to visit a workspace, a farm, a museum. Let's say you have, vocabulary that has to do with farm. Go on a school trip. Associate the visit with a lesson theme. And of course, if it's, for example, a museum, they can scan QR codes, do the research, do a presentation the next day. Okay, since I'm speaking about jobs, I want to share a small story with you. You have to do your research, guys. Do not depend on the textbook. I said something at the beginning of the presentation that it is made to be marketable. The textbooks are marketable. When I write the vocabulary as an author, it says I give them firefighter. So the publisher will switch it to fireman because it's more universal and more acceptable. So we teach our students fireman, policeman, which is wrong. One day I was asking my students, okay, we learned the vocabulary for jobs. And I asked one of my students, a girl, what job does your mother do? And she answered, my mom is a firewoman. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I teaching my kids? So at that point, I realized it was at the beginning of my career. We have to be more respectful and inclusive. So do your research, share things that are not in the textbook. By the way, the second to the last one, air hostess or stewardess. I mean, why do we associate it only with women? I mean, they're male, flight attendants. And finally, the last one, waiter, waitress. I mentioned earlier that the English language is evolving. So I couldn't find something that I liked. I found servant, but that, refers to slavery. I don't like it. I don't use it. Please, if you can find any other, words that can be used instead of waiter or waitress, please add it to the comments below. I'd like to see your perspective. Now, the same thing applies with disabilities. Please scan this QR code. It's from the official UK portal from the UK government. Do not call someone crippled. Do not call someone blind. Okay, a person has a disability or a person is visually impaired. Please be respectful. Please be respectful of others. Now, where to find these materials and how to incorporate them? First of all, you have to do your search online. The first picture here is a single parent family. There might be a parent loss. Okay, what do? Do we hide do we have to, hide the fact that there's a parent loss? No, please give the student their voice. Okay, single parent family. Take advantage of awareness days like International Women's Day. All right, have the kids do a presentation in class why this day is important. Do your research. And of course, when you're Googling for information, unfortunately, everyone, I cannot share commercial websites that you can, purchase your materials. I don't want to do that because we are having, an official educational presentation. However, I will show you two posters without describing the sources. Look at these posters. A child can be raised by grandparents, by two mothers, two fathers. Be inclusive. These materials are not that expensive. You can find them, for 2-3 euros, and then you can use them every year, either in PDF form, be it PDF, or you can have them, in actual, paper format. Now, let's look at the last one, implementing the lesson itself. I'm trying to speed up so as not to delay our students. Everyone is familiar with the 4 language skills. What are the 4 language skills? You can see them here. Listening, reading, writing, speaking. 2 of them are productive, 2 of them are receptive. I mentioned earlier, some students are better at something than something else. Look at the power of this picture. This picture is what society is about. And you know what? I remember when I was young, we wouldn't dare look left or right or communicate with other people in class. We did not have collaboration. So think to yourself, what is best for my students, pair work or grouping? Before you start the lesson. Two, three individuals together with different educational needs and abilities differentiate the output. Why not have them do an oral presentation instead of a written one, or vice versa? It doesn't matter if the textbook says do a written project or an essay. Have them do an oral presentation with a PowerPoint. It's important to allow this leeway to do whatever they can. And please never refer to a student as weak. I hate that word. It's inappropriate. Students have different abilities and educational needs. And to put it, bluntly, you have to experiment on assigning roles. If we were to judge by the elephant by his ability to climb a tree, then he would completely fail. A monkey can climb a tree, but an elephant is the strongest of all. Should we take advantage of that? That's why we're talking about the principles of flexible learning. We're talking about a democracy in the class, relational, safe, and inclusive for everyone. Now, since I just mentioned flexible learning, it's up to you, the teacher, to think about how you're going to allocate your time in class, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it. I wish I could further explain every single icon in this picture, but I don't have that much time. I will refer very briefly to the ones I circled. Ebooks. Okay, my students love ebooks. They're repeatable. They can, read them at any time they want. There are many educational apps they can use, an online library, and audiobooks. Everyone is into audiobooks lately. And you know what? You can hear them on the go. It's actually quite interesting, and you can save time. So when I'm talking about resources, my students also read comics like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man. There are some graphic novels out there that are really good. You're talking about little kids, junior classes. Here we go. 3-panel comic book story. One doesn't even have text. And you know what's the beauty of this text? When students start off in junior A class, pre-A1, they learn theirs, okay, which is a grammar word, a grammar phenomenon. There is. Dog, which is a CVC word. Hall, you don't find hall in these books at these early stages, but it's a CVCC word. And where, a question word. Hey, there's a dog in the hall. Where? So this is fun. You practice. You offer an alternative to your kids. And this is the whole meaning of trying to differentiate your lesson. And since we're talking about flipped learning, I want to advise you on something. When they have the 4 panel of the storyboard, okay, they have this cartoon with the main characters at the beginning of every lesson, okay, have them watch the video at home, have them work on it at home, and when they come to class, have them play it out. Because all this drama and theater is rehearsing a language, punctuation, and it helps them tremendously. And speaking of stressing, something that the textbooks do not do, and I want you to pay attention to this. A lot of textbooks. Oh, I'm reading. Yes, thank you, Mr. Sifaikis. Consonant, vowel, consonant, for those of you who are not aware. Now, listen to this part. A lot of textbooks do not have punctuation in them, or the punctuation exercises are so small, they're not even exercises. They're just theory. How can a student practice how to speak the language? It's up to you, the teacher, to offer more incentives in class. So the way we stress a sentence can change the meaning. Check this out. I didn't say he stole the money. I want to ask the audience, you, the audience, please answer a number in the chat. How many ways can we stress? How many different ways can we stress this sentence? I'll give you a few seconds. I didn't say he stole the money. How many different ways can we stress this sentence? Please, type a number. I'd like to see numbers. Okay, very good. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your feedback. It is actually 7. It's 7. Allow me to present the sentence in different ways. I didn't say he stole the money. Someone else did. I didn't say he stole the money. I said no such thing. I didn't say he stole the money. I implied it or wrote it down. I didn't say he stole the money, someone else did. I didn't say he stole the money, maybe he put it aside for safekeeping. I didn't say he stole the money, specific money. I didn't say he stole the money. Maybe he stole the keys, I don't know. Okay, so it's very important for students to learn pronunciation, stress, intonation, and these are things that you cannot find in exercises in the textbooks. That's why it's up to you to have them speak more in class. It's a pity, it's a shame that I only see one little exercise of speaking, one for pronunciation, even none for lessons. And that's where you come in. Now, when we're talking about confidence, I know we're running out of time. When should you interrupt a student when a student is making mistakes? Okay, I would ask the audience, but I'm in kind of a hurry. You have to correct your students after they have finished speaking. So if they are corrected while speaking, they lose focus or panic and want to give up. I remember I asked one of my students a question. What do you see in this picture? And my student, a wonderful student, she started describing and she said, the girl, she is wearing a wonderful pink dress. She is walking in the forest and looks happy. If I had stopped her at the third word, which was a huge mistake, she wouldn't have said is wearing present continuous. Correct use of the language. A wonderful pink dress, o saskomb. She used the correct word order for the adjectives. She is walking in the forest and looks happy, even present simple. If I had stopped her at the third word, she would not have produced this. And this is something that you cannot find in the textbook. Please allow your students to express themselves, then correct them. It's very important. And since we're talking about when to correct them and setting rules, there's always a student that's going to say, oh, she made a mistake, and she's going to interrupt the lesson, he or she. No, set the rules from the first day. Only the teacher will correct the students, okay? It's up to you to dictate this from the first day. Praise your students' efforts. Congratulate them, even if they make a mistake. You don't want to burn their self-esteem. And you have to have your students encourage each other. Have the little ones clap to each other when they answer something correctly. It's all about respect, cooperation, and trust me, if a student feels terrorized in class, he will not be able to follow the lesson. Now, I just want you to keep it in your hearts that you have to be their inspiration. Don't be their friends, not their leader, something in between. They have to know that they can depend on you. That's the most important thing. And they have to have a good time in class. So having said this, before I finish the presentation, stay relevant. You have to keep yourselves up to date to technology, apps, culture trends, the practices, and please do not become stale.